Back again. Da, da, da. Oh, here's my thing. All right, let's start like this time.
A long time ago, in a galaxy far, far away, there was nothing but a man on a mission to work out how to communicate in a networked world, how to use what we know to discover what we don't yet know, how to bring culture, commerce, and technology together to create a future for brands, and get the President's Prize from the IPA in the process. A bizarre coagulation of Colin Farrell, Russell Brand, Hugh Jackman, Eddie Izzard, and Adam Duritz come together to play the same man, Faris Yakob, in
Can't put my head.
Genius Steals. His story will touch you, even though he can't.
This tagline was stolen from Edwards' hands.
Right, thanks, great. Great, hello. That's my trailer. Do you like my trailer? It's quite good, isn't it? Okay, let's have some fun, shall we? I'm Faris. Hi. Remember? Yeah. So we can be friends. You can say stuff. I don't mind. We can have a nice time. And that's my Twitter. So you should all get your phones out and you should tweet and get the hashtag trending because people like that for the wrap-up reports for the conference organisers and that. And you can make fun of me online. Isn't that great? Right? Brilliant. Because it does sort of speak to kind of the nature of the pseudo-participatory mediascape that Vicky was referring to, right? Because this model of communication, me standing here broadcasting at you, it's sort of quite traditional one-way kind of stuff, isn't it? And, you know, on the internet, it's all a bit kind of person to person, as she was saying. So you could just sort of like, you know, feed back in real time and give me big data. Or not, it's up to you. It's my job, not yours, so whatever. This talk is about Paid Attention. That's a book that I wrote. It's called Paid Attention. And, the title's sort of a joke. But no one really ever laughs at it. The joke sort of is, right, in advertising, we buy and sell human attention, but we're never sure if anyone is paying attention to the attention that we paid for. Brilliant, isn't it? Yeah, it says sort of a joke. It lacks that kind of punchline element, I suppose. But essentially, I spent about 20 years working in advertising, and because I'm not very good at anything in particular, I never had the same job more than once. I've worked at media agencies, creative agencies, digital agencies. I've been a media planner, a communication strategist, a brand planner, a digital thing. I've been a creative director. I haven't been an account person. But anyway, I have quite a lot of different kinds of experience around the industry, and it occurred to me at a certain point that most people don't. Most people sort of have a very linear progression. In America especially, if you want to be the creative director on a car brand, you need to have been the creative director on a different car brand first, essentially. That's sort of how the industry works, and I find that quite boring. So I thought I'd write down, from lots of different points of view, how I think advertising might work in the world today, and that's this.
What I think is interesting about the term misdirection is it's a misnomer. Most people think it means, look at this hand, well, I do something with this one. But actually, what I want to do is direct and control your attention, at least know where it is. Because if I send your attention off into the darkness, it can come around just like throwing a boomerang and hit me when I don't want it to. So I like to think of it as managing attention. Because control is a hard word, but I manage the attention kind of like water flow. And I see where it goes, and then I have to move with that.
So that's a guy called Apollo Robbins. He's a magician, and like a lot of magicians, he's very interested in how he manages your attention because his particular mode of magic is pickpocketing. He does that thing where he's talking to you, and then he's got your wallet and he's taken your watch off your wrist and you didn't notice, that kind of stuff, right? And he says something in that clip that I read in an interview, and then later in a book. He says, attention, it's like water. And you try and manage it. And that image, that simile, was kind of the aha moment, the insight moment for me to write the book the way that I wrote it, because it made me feel like I understood something that I hadn't understood before. Attention is like water. It's a resource. It has weight, and it flows. And you can't control it, but you can try and manage it. You can create channels for it, like channel planning. That's why we call it that. I began to think about attention because attention is the foundational idea of advertising. As Rory said yesterday, the word advertising comes from anima advertere in Latin, which means to draw attention towards something. When we buy impressions in media, we're buying access to human attention. And the dominant sort of cascade model of creative advertising usually is something like AIDA, right? Attention, interest, decision, action. Or in the David Trott's version, impact, communication, persuasion. Basically the same thing, right? It underlies everything we do. So I thought I'd try and learn a bit more about it. The problem with attention, of course, is that no one really knows what it is. It's very hard to study something that only exists as a subjective phenomena inside the consciousness of other humans. You can't put it under a microscope. You can't even prove that it exists. It's a philosophical problem. I'm pretty sure that I'm sentient. There's no way for me to really know that any of you are. Not really. The first guy to talk about this, the father of modern psychology, is called William James. He's the brother of Henry James, the novelist. And he said, everyone knows what attention is, which is a really sneaky way of going, I can't define this thing. It's called an accession to omniscience. It's a rhetorical device. But he sort of goes into detail and says, okay, look, it's sort of the taking possession of one of a number of things, several trains of thought, different ideas, right? Your brain is sort of picking and choosing what to focus on. It has that ability. When I want to learn something about human nature, when I want to understand the manifold splendor of human behavior, obviously being British, I immediately go and read Shakespeare. In Julius Caesar, Mark Antony says, friends, Indians, countrymen, lend me your ears. That encodes something else that we've just learned about attention, I feel like, right? You have ears. It's a metaphor, though, isn't it? So I want not your ears, your attention. I'm asking you to give me your attention, and it has value. You can't lend something that doesn't have value. I want it because it's valuable to me. He wanted it because it was valuable to him. In ancient Rome, if you could hold the attention of the crowd and stir the hearts of men, they would go and stab Caesar for you, and then you could be Caesar. It's really powerful attention. It's really useful. Because it's a subjective phenomenon, it's very hard to experimentally understand it, but because you all have it going on in your heads right now, and because I'm trying to earn it by walking around the stage and modulating my tone of voice and showing different kinds of stimuli and, telling jokes and that, we can do some experiments with it collectively in the room. You can do attention experiments with me today. Do you want to do that? Yeah, why not? You may as well. You're sitting there anyway. So, this is an arrow. See that? That's an arrow. Now, your brain's been trained to follow arrows because, that's how signs work, right? And so if I stand over here, I'm making your brain make a decision. You want to look at the arrow, you want to look at me, you want to look at the arrow, so you sort of try and do both a bit, but you can't really do both. But you're choosing. You're choosing to look at the arrow, pointing at the URL to my website, or to me. However, sound effects, brilliant. If I do that, you're not really supposed to play like fake fire alarms inside crowded theatres. That's technically a bad one, isn't it? It's naughty. But if I do that, you can't not pay attention to the alarm. You can't decide to not pay attention to an alarm. That's not how it works. Because like everything your brain does, as Rory said yesterday, it's trying to keep you alive. And certain things have to take precedence. Anything that could be danger overrules your volition in how you allocate your attention. So we learned something else. We learned that it has direction. We learned that it was valuable. And then we just learned that sometimes you're in control of it and sometimes you're not.
This is an awareness test. How many passes does the team in white make? The answer is 13.
You got it?
But did you see the moonwalking bear?
Ah. That was an advertisement by WCRS in London for cycle safety, but it's ripped off almost exactly from a psychological experiment that worked with a gorilla, but they replaced it with a bear because, you know, that's creativity. Point being, when your attention is focused on something, it fills up. It has a capacity. It stops being able to take in more information, and you don't see things. That's called inattentional blindness. You literally do not see the bear because you're counting the balls, or the passes, or whatever. There is an analogous phenomena called inattentional deafness, which means that when you're on your phone, you literally can't hear what your wife is saying. But that's not an excuse, apparently. Because it gets full and we don't see things, it kind of makes me think about how we have to get focused attention, how we attract it, I suppose, and how we understand it, and changes how we utilize it. There are other aspects of your attentional system that are quite weird. Everybody do this. Hold your hand out at the end of your, like fully extend your arm, right? Hold your thumb, right, good, yeah, like that. Yay, thumbs up for me. Brilliant. You see your thumbnail? Imagine a circle surrounding that thumbnail. That's called the foveal center of your vision. It's the only part of your vision you can read in. Everything outside that circle is much too low resolution to read. So when you're reading, your eyes bounce along the page like this. In what are called you can put them down now, thanks guys. In what are called saccades, your eyes are constantly scanning like that. In what are called saccades, because it's trying to fill in the details. Everything else is low res. Your brain, however, knows that, evolutionarily speaking, knows that you would freak out if you realized this. It would make you feel very uncomfortable all the time. So it makes it look like it's not doing that. I can prove this to you. Next time you go to the restroom, like after this, right? Go to the restroom and do your business, whatever, and then go to the sink and wash your hands, because you should always wash your hands after you've done your business, and look in the mirror and look from one eye to the other and move your focus, your attention, your eyes, backwards and forwards from left eye to right eye, left eye to right eye, right, like that. You will feel your eyes moving, but they will not look like they're moving in the mirror. They will stay exactly the same place, because your brain edits out those saccades. It's really freaky. Don't do it when you're under the influence of anything. It can really, really freak you out. It's not that fun. But yeah, do try it. It's fun. So your brain's filling in a lot of gaps, right? It's called the fabulation of verisimilitude, which is quite an obnoxious phrase, but I like obnoxious phrases. Right. Attention, then, is a certain kind of a thing, right? It is the focused aspect of your consciousness, one of the most complex operational things in the world. In fact, the most complex thing in the known universe is human consciousness. There are more interconnected neurons in your brain than stars in the Milky Way galaxy. And we have no idea how it works. Really not at all. The attention system seems to be a way of saving time, of saving energy, right? It's keeping you alive. That's job number one. The second thing it's trying to do is save energy, because your brain is what's called a cognitive miser. It means that the amount of sugar and energy your brain takes up is massively disproportionate to the rest of your body. It's a huge hog. It's like loads of RAM or whatever. And to save you having to think about stuff in the same way every time, it uses heuristics and patterns. Any kind of repeatable phenomena becomes a pattern. When you're a baby, you don't know anything. You don't even know how to move your arms and legs, and you're sort of working it out, right? But pretty quickly, you realize if you drop something, it pretty reliably falls downwards. That sort of tends to really happen the whole time, right? And by 2 months, babies basically grasp the idea of gravity. If it didn't fall down, that would re-trigger your attention system, because it's a break in the pattern that you expect. So, somewhat counterintuitively, patterns trigger attention, as do pattern interrupts. What have you been seeing on the screen behind me? Yeah. Rory showed some faces yesterday too. I was pleased about that, right? Probably read my book. Nicked it from there. This is called pareidolia. Your brain has the deep desire to pick out patterns out of anything you see, and the most important pattern for you to survive is what faces are doing. If you don't know how to read faces and can't tell if people are trying to, cheat you, steal you, lie to you, or kill you, you don't survive in the tribal savannah, and you won't be here. So humans are really good, mostly, at reading emotions. If you all look really, really bored, I would try and change my approach to something different, right? I probably wouldn't, actually, to be honest. So your brain loves faces, and it sees them everywhere. It's really, really into faces. It also likes giving things agency. If you've ever sold cars, all car manufacturers know that the most important thing about why you buy a car is the face. BMWs look a bit like big cats, and Mercedes they look different, right? And the face is what appeals to you. You have to sort of get that face in your head. The pattern and the repeats and the faces. Right. So in advertising, we intuitively leverage human attention in different ways. Because patterns are repeatable phenomena, repetition is an extremely powerful way to hack attention, and lots of ads have used this in lots of different ways. This ad is from the 1950s, and it does repetition, as you'll see. And it also does another thing. It does another little attention hacky thing that's quite sneaky. And when I tell you about it, it's going to annoy you forever. But I know it, so you have to know it as well.
And this new zest fine for me. New? Zest isn't new. This zest is, see, improved, and mild enough even for your delicate skin.
New improved zest. New soft aqua color. New soft fragrance. Smells mild. Zest is mild. So mild, even delicate skin can dare to feel really clean. Clean, fresh, the way Zest makes you feel.
So if you were to do some research, right, on the consumer outtake of that spot, you can be pretty clear what they're going to say. I think Zest, brand recognition, is fresh and new and possibly mild and fresh and new, right? It's pretty heavy-handed kind of work because it's from the 50s and we weren't very sophisticated then, right? It also does something else really sneaky. And because it's an early version of this trope, it does it in a really kind of embarrassed way. It says, new Zest. And then the woman goes, but Zest isn't new. And the other woman goes, this Zest is new. This is a trick called new and improved. New and improved is hilarious because new and improved is an oxymoron. If something is new, it is new. If something is improved, it existed before and is now improved. Therefore, it is not new. They cannot both exist in the same space. It is a quantum problem, right? But it does something really juicy to your brain because the two things humans most want are security and novelty. Security is familiarity. Familiarity means I've seen something, it didn't kill me, that's probably quite safe, right? But by the very virtue of the fact that I'm still alive, the thing I saw, which is familiarity, makes me feel safe. However, that's job number one, keeping you alive, right? Job number two is procreating. That's novelty. You have to go and find new things to be excited about. So your human existence is drawn between the two poles of safety and novelty, constantly, right? And where you lie on those poles will dictate to some massive degree how your life goes. If you travel or not, what kind of jobs you take, the risks you take, your politics to a great extent. New and improved. New and improved is perfect because it's both safe, won't kill you, and exciting and new. It's both those things. And therefore, people put it on packaging a lot. You'll see it all through supermarkets. New and improved Orangina packaging. Oh, it didn't work, did it? Oh well. Attention is this abstract thing. But a while ago, people worked out that it was sort of the resource being allocated in advertising and media exchanges with people. About 15 years ago, someone in Wired wrote a very prescient piece called The Attention Economy. And then companies began to mine attention, right, for the first time at global scale. The companies that are inventing self-driving cars and that have contact lenses that detect blood sugar and, balloons in over Africa giving you the internet are all companies that, well, there's just two of them really. It's Google and Facebook. They're companies that for the first time ever found a way to scale attention mining to a global platform level algorithmically. And therefore they made absolute bucket loads of money, which they then invested in the self-driving cars and all that stuff, right? Attention is so valuable that it's the most valuable determinate resource in the world, and people started to realize this when Google and Facebook got really big. And so everybody wanted a bit of it. So I'm like, well, if I need, that seems good, I better get some of that, right? So a lot of companies began to work out more and more effective and efficient ways of mining human attention, of attracting and keeping attention, right? Keeping you locked on their media channels. And because of the magic screen in your pocket, accessing the magic internet in the sky, or the cloud, or whatever, you have completely ubiquitous access to all the content that exists in the world, and a strong commercial imperative for these companies to keep you consuming as much of it as possible all the time. Because more and more attention is being mined, there's less and less available. Which means that very small amounts of attention can be worth vast amounts of money. BuzzFeed and Vice and whatnot actually contain, you get about 36 average user seconds per day per person, and that makes you $1 billion company. Because the less attention there is, the more valuable it becomes because it's scarcer and scarcer, right? About 3 or 4 years ago now, Microsoft Research in Canada released a report that says something that people thought was really interesting. They said, human beings now have less of an attention span than a goldfish. Did you hear that? Did it hit the news here? Facebook says it all the time. They love putting it in their presentations. They think it's really good. Now, I am a not particularly trusting person. I'm relatively skeptical. And when I heard that, I thought, that sounds like bollocks, doesn't it? So I had a look at the report. The report actually is based on about 170 MRI scans based on response to ad stimulus. But then the quote, the headline quote of the goldfish thing doesn't come from the research Microsoft did. They source it to a company called Statistic Brain, which I then looked up on the internet. Statistic Brain is a research company of some kind, and here's the chart where they got the data from with their fishy fact in it. 8.5 seconds, attention span's gone down from 2,000 to 8.5 seconds in the last 15 years. Goldfish attention span, 9 seconds, right? I was like, well, that sounds, again, like absolute nonsense. So I reverse image searched this chart to try and work out where this data came from, because you'll see there's no source, right? I don't like it when there aren't sources. And I found the table completely ripped off from a book called Building Information Modeling and Construction Management, which is a computer-assisted design manual. And they source it to a couple of institutions, and those institutions disclaim any knowledge of the research entirely. It's literally just a lie. It's completely made up garbage, but it made up garbage that was pushed through Microsoft into the newspaper and back into your decks. It's what's called fake news, I believe, nowadays, right? If you think about it, it doesn't even make any sense. It's applying a bit of folk knowledge that you think you know. Goldfish have short attention spans, right? But that's not what you think you know. If you think really hard, what you think is that goldfish have short memories, right? 6-second memories. Now, it turns out that's also not true, completely untrue. Goldfish have really good memories. They're in fact used as primary tests, experimental test subjects in lots of memory tests because they have such good memory formation and it's so easy to see the different mapping of neurons in their brain. I think what happened here was, right, it's a thing called motivated reasoning. As humans, we're very much inclined to believe things that make us feel better about ourselves and or make us money. It's just normal, right? And we have this tendency to put these shiny little fish in bowls of water and they swim around in circles. And we thought, if I was swimming around in a circle all day long, God, that'd be really boring, wouldn't it? I feel, is that cruel? Do you think that's cruel? And then someone went, no, it's not cruel. They haven't got any memory. They're just running around. Every time it's a whole new trip around the goldfish bowl. Like, what's over here? I don't know. I'll have a look again. Whee! So in order to make ourselves feel better, we made up some nonsense. And then someone else made up some other nonsense and attached it to that nonsense. And then you get 2-second attention spans in things like Facebook sales decks. All because, well, garbage. The more and more money that's going into trying to attract attention colonizes more and more time. Because of the magic screen thing in your hands, you can now do internet or media or consume content anywhere all the time. And in America, media consumption has plateaued at about 12 hours a day. It cannot go up any higher because people have to sleep. Attention is a function of an awake human consciousness, and once you're consuming all media all the time, that's it. And companies don't like that because they have to keep growing to make banks happy. So they have to fight each other for your attention all the time. Attention's a zero-sum game now. There used to be sort of this thing I think we called it free time, right? And you do work stuff, and then you go home, and then you walk around, talk to people, but they don't have that anymore. After every meeting, in every toilet, even now everywhere, people are constantly on their phones. It absorbs every available piece of brain attention available. I call this peak attention, because like with peak oil, it's not that there's not any more attention left, it's just that it gets harder and harder to get every new bit of it, because most of it's already been put on something else.
Look at this guy walk into a wall, or this woman walk into a mall water fountain. And check this out, a bear on the loose, and this man texting almost walks right into him. The videos are funny, but the problem is serious.
The video is funny, and the problem is serious, but especially for us, because we need the advertising attention bit, right? We need the A, otherwise everything else doesn't matter. And we've got so good at hacking attention with the little magic devices in our hand that we're actually subverting it from its primary function, which is keeping you alive and safe from bears. Bears are now slipping in through the attentional cracks caused by us being on our phones. Dangerous stuff, right? We understand intuitively that attention is a complex thing, right? But when we buy and sell it in the form of impressions, we render the complex simple, and often when you render the complex simple, you turn it into something wrong. Impressions are a binary system, right? They're either there or not there. A viewable ad impression on the internet is 2 seconds of display of like a pixel or something, right? But there's at least two different ways to think about attention, right? There's duration, and there's quality. Hopefully, right now, by being, generally good, I'm holding some aspect of your attention, probably like high, but maybe not full, right? You've probably got something in the back of your mind you're worried about, maybe the shopping you've got to do, or an argument you had, or whatever it is, right? But hopefully, I'm holding some of your attention enough to make it feel like, you're getting something out of it. If attention spans are getting shorter, which as I've just said, they're not, because that's nonsense. Also, attention spans aren't really real, by the way. There's no such thing as an attention span, just so you know. Jerry Seinfeld once said, there's no such thing as an attention span. People have infinite attention if you're keeping them entertained. Like, if attention spans were really a thing, which they're not, if they were getting shorter, which they're not, how come movies are getting longer? The Avengers is over 3 hours long. The good thing about watching it, I'm going to watch it here, I've not seen it yet, they have the intervals here in the cinema, don't they? So good. Because 3 hours is a really long time, right? Every year or so, there's one of these viral news stories, usually from Korea, that says something like a young man in a cyber cafe was playing an immersive role-playing game and forgot to eat or go to the restroom for 3 or 4 days and drops over dead. Clearly, some things are very, very good at having very large amounts of attention allocated to them, just not ads on Facebook. This is the last time this data was published, but I still want to talk about this. In 2012, ComScore announced that 5.3 trillion ads had been digitally served in the USA. 5.3 trillion ads. Now, when you say trillion, you should really, when you see the word trillion in real life, which you don't very often, your brain sort of gets a bit confused. It doesn't really know what a trillion is, because you're never going to encounter anything that big, right? It's so absurdly big a number. I'll give you an example of how big. 1 million seconds is about a week, right? 1 billion seconds is about 30 years. 1 trillion seconds, it's 32,000 years. It's a really, really big number. So the idea that somehow 5 trillion ads were shown to people in America on the internet sounds a bit like nonsense, doesn't it? Like it would be millions and millions per person per day. It's only 300 million people in America. What are all these ads doing? Now, we sort of know that this isn't true, right? About half the ads are unviewable, which means that they're not ads. A non-viewable impression is nothing. It means nothing. An impression is somebody seeing an ad. A non-viewable one means nothing. So half of them just don't exist. A lot of them are ad blocked and stuff, and a third of them are fake. They're made from bots and Russia and traffic and whatnot. And then the ad tech taxes that Sam spoke about earlier today, so I don't need to go into that. You get the idea, right? A lot of these impressions are nonsense, but even if it's like 10% of that, that's still a lot of ads being shoved into the same amount of attention that before had a lot less in them, which in basic terms just means they can't be working as well if they work at all. We operate inside a low latency culture. Things move back into the system really, really fast. On Thursday, what day is today? Friday. On Wednesday, North Face released a case study video saying that they'd hacked Wikipedia with some images of their own products. And then on Thursday, Wikipedia said, what are you doing? That's against the rules. We hate you. And today, I wrote an article about it for the Economic Times of India. You get backlash really quickly nowadays because Twitter's really fast, right? It moves at the speed of gossip, which is faster than the speed of light. I think I am going to skip this, though, because I might not have enough time.
Sam?
No, and it's a bit depressing. This is the example from Under Armour, very similarly to the thing I just told you about at North Face, so don't worry about that for now. Same idea. Point being, right? Attention is the consciousness of your existence. Your life is literally what you pay attention to, so thinking about it as a commodity is horribly dehumanizing. When we use metaphors like commodity, there is a strong tendency for capitalism to exploit commodities and, use them all up until they're gone. That's not good, right? Because it means everyone's really distracted and confused all the time. Here's what I think looks cool, right? In the olden days, when things were simple and media was discreet, and there was just 5 places to put ads, and only we could do it, and governments and media companies, right? It was relatively simple. We would tell stories about the products and services our clients made, and in between those stories and the services, in between the stories we tell and the products they sell, this idea manifests, the ineffable brand. This idea of brand creates itself as a sort of set of associations that drive price premiums or something like that, right? If we still think we're locked inside that model of communication, we make a number of what I call category errors. I'll give you an example. Now, you remember Mr. Trott said this morning, right? The thing you have to know about banks is that everybody hates them, right? Because banks rip people off. That's probably quite a good base level insight about banks in general, right? This ad launched on the Air Bridges, the big HSBC media property that's been running for about 15 years, Air Bridges of many airports, right? About 3 years ago. Now, it's quite a complicated ad. It's quite sophisticated, so I'm going to decode it for you. It says, be part of the future here, right? And this is a picture of a bee. It's a homonym, no homophone. They sound the same. It's good, isn't it? No, it's not. No. Now, the strategy behind this ad is quite obvious to me because just before this started to happen, even though everybody hates banks, HSBC was taking a particular drubbing for being really, really naughty above and beyond all the naughtiness of normal banks. The first bit of it, what we began to notice, is when they were fined, at the time, the biggest fine in history, $2.9 billion for knowingly laundering narco-terror money out of Mexico for over a decade. Yeah. And then, of course, they got caught manipulating the LIBOR exchange rates in Europe, and then they got caught funneling money for rogue nations like Iran, and they paid more fines and more fines and more fines and more fines, and nobody went to jail because that's how it works. But the brand managers were like, mate, everybody thinks we're rubbish. Everyone's really being mean about us, and it makes me feel bad about myself, and I don't like it, so I want a campaign, and I want the strategy to be something like, please don't remember all the crimes that we've been doing for the last few years. Let's focus instead on the future, where we haven't yet done any crimes, and so, theoretically at least, we could be less terrible then than we were. So that's the strategy, makes sense. Be part of the future. That's sort of an imitation, isn't it? And I was like, well, I'm quite skeptical about bank advertising and banks in general. But maybe they have turned over a new leaf. Maybe that's what the bee is supposed to mean. I have no idea what the bee is supposed to mean. Maybe this ad is intentionally rubbish. Maybe it's supposed to be rubbish in order to intrigue you enough to pick out your smartphone device and go and look at this website they've put on the internet, hsbc.com, in the future. Maybe they've mustered the might of the world's largest and most corrupt financial institution and put together a set of tools and content that will demonstrate to me how they can bring me into the future as the global business traveler I am, and we could partner forever, and everybody would be really happy, right? So, with a little bit of sort of anxiety, I took my phone out and I did some work for this brand, putting in the URL into my phone. I used some of my own data, my money, to do this work for this brand they've asked me to do. just to see what might happen. And I found a website. And the first thing I saw that it was a mobile optimized website, which is good. It's not a guarantee, is it? Let's be honest, right? But then I saw it, and I was aghast. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. I think that, oh God, it can't be. Oh God, it is. It's the website of the ads I've just been looking at. They've just put a PDF of all the ads that I've just looked at, so I can have the PDF of the ads on my phone? I don't understand. Why would you do that? What level of hubris would you want? It's just so insulting. I couldn't believe it. I really couldn't. Clearly, a lot of extraordinarily well-paid people who were very, very smart sat in a room, right? And they said, what have we got? Well, we've got this bee idea. It's going to be great. And we're going to put that on the air bridge because we own that media already. And everyone's like, great. And they're like, what about digital, right, though? Digital is quite important, something, let's do that. All right, great, well, let's do digital, sounds good. Let's whack a URL on the poster. Brilliant, digital, done. What are we going to put on the website, though? What about the ads? I love it, let's do it. God, this stuff makes me sick. It's so arrogant. It's so arrogant. Anyway, it's garbage, and it's because they think the only thing they can do is put ads because they're the ad part of the system, right? If you just assume ads are the answer to everything, you just put ads everywhere, which is like being trapped in some sort of hellish world of ads. Anyway, look, PDF of a different ad, not the B one. This one's got lemonade on it. Yeah. All right, look. Here's a more, I think, interesting way of thinking about how brands operate today. A broader palette, let's say, beyond simply fragments of narrative and words and pictures put in places, right? I have a certain set of beliefs, and my belief is that a brand is a set of beliefs, a way of acting in the world guided by generative metaphors that help you make decisions throughout the operation of the company. That's why I say everything is PR. I say it a lot, especially on Twitter. Everything a company does is communication. How you pay your taxes, whether or not you launder money from narco-terrorists, right? These are branding things you're doing. And if we just keep our sort of advice locked into the box that helps them do ads, well, no one's going to believe the ads when they know that they lie all the time, right? So I think this is more interesting, right? I think on one side of the spectrum of experiences of brand behavior, you have experiences, you do things for people to make their life better in some way, hopefully. And then you can turn those things maybe into advertising or content. People sometimes say advertising is content. I don't think that's true. Consumers can tell the difference. Content is the program they're watching. Ads are the break in between with the ads. It's quite obviously a difference. If advertising was content, we wouldn't need to have two different words. We'd just call it all the one word. That's sort of how language works. So that's good. Anyway, that's what I think things look like. Working out which set of different things you do is the job of strategy and creative, right? That's how we can help our clients. So when I was last at a big creative agency in New York, I made myself a creative director because I thought I fancied giving it a go, right? And we did a campaign based on this model, although I've iterated it a bit since. So I'll show you that because it's the last bit of creative work I sort of did.
When BMW was launching its first ever electric vehicle, the BMW Active-E, it was breaking into a category in which it had almost no presence. So instead of approaching the launch in a traditional way, we completely reinvented what a car launch was. The traditional ad campaign was replaced by an experiment in collective engineering, one we called Activate the Future. In the first phase of the experiment, we created a conversation with our target, not about a car, but about a topic we knew they were passionate about, the future of mobility. We partnered with a host of thought leaders to discuss the topic in a series of short films called Wherever You Want to Go. As this broader conversation began to resonate, we then moved into the second phase of our experiment. We created the BMW Evolve app to directly counter the biggest barrier with this new product sector, range anxiety. 90% of US drivers drive less than 100 miles a day, and instead of telling that to consumers, we showed them. The app tracked actual driving habits and highlighted the benefits a driver would experience if they switched to an electric vehicle. Then, on an accompanying site, bmwactivatethefuture.com, drivers could also create manual trips, sync mobile app data, and use the EV dashboard to see how switching to an EV can save time, money, and CO2 emissions. As anticipation for the launch of the Active-E grew, we created a video to serve as a rallying cry for the upcoming field trial, drive application signups, and introduce the term Electronaut as a title for our Active-E drivers. The video was distributed through BMW's social channels, targeted blogs, and the Active-E website. Hand-raiser signups immediately spiked. The video also introduced our BMW Electronaut iPad app, designed to recruit drivers at auto shows and dealers. It helped a range of users, from those unfamiliar with EVs to those who wanted more information on the Active-E, determine if they were ready to become a BMW Electronaut. Those who were could apply for a vehicle right from the app. Once the reservation process opened, BMW received twice as many applicants as there were cars, within just the first 9 hours. Within 2 months, every car was sold. But that was just the beginning. Phase 3 is the field trial itself, and throughout the experience, BMW will broadcast the Electronaut stories to give insights into the electric vehicle lifestyle and inspire future BMW EV drivers. And the data collected along the way, from the BMW Evolve app to driving habits of Electronauts, will be used by BMW to inform its next generation of EVs.
So some sort of mix of content and ads, events, utilities, and various whatnot, and won lots of awards and sold lots of cars, which is kind of the point, right? You want to do both, ideally, because that's what clients like. So I guess my final point I'll leave you with, right? And because I'm running over, no questions. Just don't want to do questions. You don't want to ask them. You don't need to. It's fine, right? I want to keep those 5 minutes to myself, if that's okay. Thanks a lot. Appreciate it. It feels like the metaphors we use change how we act in the world because we are meaning-seeking creatures. By calling attention a commodity, we have a tendency to frack it and strip mine it and burn it up and, whatever. Maybe that quantification tramples over qualitative questions about whether or not we should be doing that, and maybe thinking about it as a commons rather than as a commodity, a commons that we all look after and share and enjoy together if we do it responsibly, would be a better metaphor potentially, I think. This is a pyramid I wrote for myself based on the food pyramid. So I realized that I have a really serious addiction to Twitter, right? I spend a vast amount of time on Twitter, and I noticed it was starting to make me unwell because the nature of the algorithms tends to, exploit things like higher-end emotions, fear, rage, etc., and people trying to tax attention that way. So, a lot of stuff was coming into my head very fast all the time, and it was making me stressed out. So I decided to limit my consumption to only, except when I'm here, obviously, I'm live tweeting everything, because, for the hashtag, guys, for the hashtag. But it feels like this was also a way to think about media planning. I think we over-index on media that's bad for people, right? Some of the research supporting this is based on subjective well-being. People report feeling less good after consuming lies. Makes you angry when you consume hate speech. It's not good for you. And brands shouldn't be in those environments either because lies are a context of toxicity. Social media, 1 to 2 hours a day, generally makes you feel better. After that, it declines precipitously. So, a bit of that's probably all right. Having a chat with people is quite good for you. Do that as much as you want. That's fine. Books are quite good for you, etc., right? Thinking about more holistically how we think about our media consumption and how brands operate in these spaces might solve some of the problems that we've been talking about for the last couple of days, eh? And it looks quite cool, not bad. Right, thanks. Anyway, that's pretty much it. While I've got your attention, instead of questions, I'm going to play you a trailer for my book because I made a trailer for my book and I like it. She really did say that. She really did say that. Anyway, thanks very much for your attention.